Dr. Fuhrman, are you going to sing for us?
No. I did. That's all you get.
Oh, will you show us your abs? Okay. There you go. Look at those muscles. Look at those muscles. So now I'm a little flustered here. So here we go. Today we have Dr. Fuhrman in the classroom. We're going to learn about the relationship with food and emotions. You can say food and mood. And so today I ask that you fasten your seatbelt because Dr. Fuhrman and Petey are here to teach us how to eat well. So fasten your seatbelt. It's time to learn and grow together. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyounneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening, viewing friends. I'm so grateful that we're here and embracing each other in this beautiful best day ever. And for those of you who've been tuning in since 2011, or maybe just tuned in yesterday for the first time when we talked about how food affects our mood, well, please know I'm just grateful that you are with us. But if this is the first time that someone said, hey, come join Dr. Fuhrman on the Lillian McDermott Radio Show classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends on Facebook Live or firstfacebook.com/Lillian's Radio Show, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now today, we had a little bit of a glitch on Facebook Live, but we were able to get through, and I hope that all of you were able to join us in the new link. But we'll always work really hard to make sure that you are included in the classroom. For those of you who are watching on Facebook Live at Lillian's Radio Show, I want to encourage you that if you have any questions for Dr. Fuhrman, that you type in a Q, a big old bold Q. That way, sometimes you want to make a statement, affection, or just love, or whatever it is that you want to do. But if you have a Q on there, then I'll pay closer attention to the question. That will help me guide this whole thing. Now, we are talking about food and mood. So your questions, if we can keep them to that, that would be great. If we can get to the leftover questions from last month, we will do that as well. So we're just very fortunate that I get to ask you the question if you've had your G-bombs today, because this is where we take personal responsibility for our health. That's the kind of conversation that we had yesterday with Dr. Kelly Brogan, where she was talking about that first, you've got to take ownership of your life. And this is what Dr. Fuhrman, 12 times best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, researcher, teacher, great dancer, although he won't dance on my in the classroom, but I've seen him dance on stage with a bunch of older ladies. And so I'm someday, and he even flashes his abs to us. This is, you never know what Dr. Fuhrman is going to do on the Lillian McDermott Radio Show classroom. And his, Petey, his dog, Petey, I don't know, he's gaining popularity. And so we may even get a public appearance by Dr. Petey Dog. So today we're going to talk about food and mood, as I said before. There are so many different foods that we grew up with. that make us feel comfortable. But as I've said many times, comfortable can kill us. There are many people that get beaten every night and they're comfortable about that. There are many people who drink themselves to sleep or to numbness or eat to numbness, and that's comfortable for them. That can kill a person. Stepping outside the comfort zone and figuring out how you can turn the comfort into something different and new. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Joel Fuhrman is in the classroom. Thank you so much, Dr. Fuhrman, for coming on the Lillian McDermott Radio Show classroom.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So today, how many times have you taken, Dr. Fuhrman, these foods that you grew up with, that maybe you learned how to make a new way, and people say, well, how can you live this way? What is your passion? Share us a little bit of your background and why you have stuck to this and have the science to back you up, but yet still there are people out there that look at the same science and come up with a different conclusion. So lots of questions here. Let's go.
Well, there's a lot of reasons people are driven to want to hold on to their rigidly held belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people fight like crazy to avoid the reality of the overwhelming preponderance of evidence and twist and manipulate it and have different opinions. And it's really quite simple. And there really shouldn't be different opinions if people were left with a blank slate and just tried to judge something on its merits and weight it like a scientist would the, when you have and we look at all the data and all the studies and put it all together, it overwhelmingly is not contradictory or confusing. It's pretty straightforward, and that our diet, we have to eat a diet rich in vegetables, or we can't have excellent health.
Very good. And so when you were growing up, at your table, were there healthy foods that made you feel like you were home?
No. I always loved food and liked everything I was served and just ate a lot of food and ate till I was very full and overate and I wasn't eating a healthy diet when I was very young. By the time I was like between 13 to 15 years old, my family changed the way we ate. Mm-hmm. And I did, so I did start, but I understood why the changes were being made, and I was one of the people who were architecting that change with my family, because it made so much sense to me to take good care of our future by eating right when we were young. I mean, our body, when we're 80 years old or 90 years old, is the culmination of all the food we put into it our whole life, every minute we were alive. We don't just start eating healthy at 75 and expect to be healthy at 90. That's the culmination, because the food becomes us. And the better quality of food we put in the body, the better quality body we have to last us a long time, and to be there for us when we want it to. So the golden years, the later years, become very unfortunately tragic for most Americans, because they abuse their bodies when they're younger and then they expect to be healthy, and they're really in quite pain, discomfort, mental problems, and loss of memory. And, often they're in tremendous discomfort and have no quality of life once they pass the age of 80, if they're living that long.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that in mind, you said that you were fed a lot of foods, that you were eating a certain way. You were an athlete, so you were probably told how to eat a certain way. And I've gone onto lots of websites where they quote, the Mayo Clinic, the University of Illinois Extension. They'll quote a lot of these things, and they come up with something like eat frequently. It's like totally different than what you share with us and that I've learned with you and we've learned in the classroom. There's still a lot of misinformation out there about how much we should eat, when we should eat. Don't skip breakfast. Breakfast is your best meal. And then we've talked about intermittent fasting. How can we dispel all the myths and start focusing on what truly will help us to reach 100 years, and maybe the last year or so kind of like slow down to prepare for our next life?
Well, The most important thing to remember is that whether you eat breakfast or not is not the important thing. The important thing is not to go to sleep on a full stomach.
Okay.
The most important thing is to stack your calories earlier in the day so you can finish dinner earlier and not eat the 3 hours before dinner. So particularly the important is to finish your dinner by 7 o'clock and don't eat after that. That's the most important thing. If you're going to bed at 10 or 11, 10 and 12, the most important thing is not to eat after 7 o'clock at night. That is the most critical finding of the overwhelming amount of evidence, more than intermittent fasting based on an hour, because people could eat late at night and then skip breakfast and still have a 14-hour window, but that's not favorable. To eat late at night, sleep on a full stomach, and then eat a late breakfast. That's detrimental, even though you intermittent fasted.
Mm-hmm.
The important part is to shift your calories so you're not going to bed with food in your stomach. That's the most important thing.
Yes, yes. Okay, so comfort foods. The comfort foods that you, if you think of your childhood and joy at the table, what was that comfort food for you?
I don't remember that much, but I do remember, eating a lot of white bread and eating a lot of lamb chops and steak and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think meat and bread, or meat and potatoes, eating and loving French fries. My father and I walking to Nathan's, in Yonkers and getting French fries with ketchup, and that used to be a favorite food of mine. So but obviously fast food started exploding back in the 1950s. I was born in 53. By then, Nathan's hot dogs with French fries and burgers, and hot dogs was probably the only large fast food chain. Then White Castle came, and then, so actually in the 60s, it started to explode. And then the 70s, of course, fast food was starting to be everywhere across the country.
Yeah.
But we know that, for example, we're talking about mood and food, that there's a link between commercial baked goods and fast food and mental illness.
Ooh.
And that even 2 servings a week of commercial baked goods or fast food doubles your lifetime risk of developing depression. And what I'm saying right now is that when you eat fast food, it's kind of like a stimulatory event for the brain. When we flood our body with concentrated calories, whether that be the insulin spike and the sugar spike from eating white bread, cotton candy, or white rice, that's a stimulatory event because you have a spike of glucose in the bloodstream that stimulates the brain cells and has a negative effect on brain function and life of your brain. So your frequency of stimulatory events eventually takes its toll on your intelligence, but it also greatly affects your mood and predisposes you towards depression. And the American population is ubiquitously dysthymic. You know what I'm saying by the word dysthymic? It means that they're not, because most people aren't quite depressed and they're eating fast food 3 to 5 times a week, but they're not that happy and not excited about life, and they're not creative. So it's a combination of factors here that are going on, that are their emotions and their intelligence are suppressed by these stimulatory events. And every time you have a high caloric exposure, like in the primary ways we have high caloric exposures are through a sugar rush, honey, maple syrup, white bread. And keep in mind that a pizza or white rice, or that these foods function in the body just like eating a sugar cube, but there's no biological difference because you still get a flood of glucose into the bloodstream. But also, the flood of calories through oil into the bloodstream can create a bolus to affect the brain as well, because there's no way you can get calories into the bloodstream that quickly unless you ate processed grains or processed sugar or you produced oil. Because if you eat like a nut or an avocado or even a piece of meat, the fat's not going to come into the bloodstream as fast as if you just pour oil straight into your mouth. So oil can get from the digestive tract into the bloodstream within 3 to 5 minutes. There's no way you can absorb. So you can put 120 calories of olive oil in a spoon and take it in your mouth, and you just had 120 calories enter your bloodstream in the next couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that caloric, there's no way you can have calories into the bloodstream that rapidly. And every time you bolus that bloodstream with a huge amount of calories, it's another stimulatory event for the brain. So then the fried foods, when oil is cooked at a high temperature, you're particularly forming aldehydes and free radicals that flood the bloodstream and affect brain function. So it's that combination of fried foods and sweets. That's, we're talking about fast food, French fries, chips, fried chicken, white bread, muffins, bagels, croissants, and pizza that has the most dramatic effects on affecting brain function and your mental function. In other words, your loss of creativity, your loss of intelligence, decision making, and dumbing you down over life the more you stimulate the brain with concentrated calories.
Okay, so
that's only half the equation.
Yeah,
we can talk about later.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about, as much. I didn't mean, I thought you had paused because I wanted to address bread. There are people that just because it says gluten-free or it says that it is maybe grain or whatever, they feel that they can eat all the bread they want just because it's not white. And so there's a misconception that is planted in us from media, commercials, and just wanting to stick to our comfort foods or sandwiches. But the reality is that's the habit, which is to have the food and then you hear gluten-free and now it's good to eat. Can you address how to fall out of that? How do you get out of this mentality then having a sandwich is a good thing because now you're having 2 pieces of bread? And what can we do to substitute it?
Well, first of all, there's degrees of quality of bread and harmfulness of bread. You could say that the worst bread might be white bread made with pastry flour, because pastry flour, the grind is more fine. It's like cocaine or talcum powder. It makes the bread more soft and made with angel food cake or whatever they make it for, it's a real pastry flour to fluff up croissants. So we can take a whole wheat flour and we could make it a very fine grind, like a pastry flour whole wheat, and it'll still have a very high glycemic effect because it's been ground so finely. I see a lot of breads where the first or second ingredient says wheat flour, meant to trick people into thinking it's whole wheat flour, because white flour, they can say wheat flour. And some breads have whole wheat flour as the first ingredient. The second ingredient might be wheat flour. So you know then it's about half of white flour, and it's still going to be relatively glycemically unfavorable. What we're really looking for is breads that are made from sprouted grains, or breads that are made from other types of non-grain flours like bean flour or sprouted grain flour, a mixed seed bread. So the bread brands I recommend are usually the Food for Life Ezekiel brand breads, because they're more coarse. They're made from sprouted grains, and the grains are not ground. Some people don't like it because they're not as soft and mushy like Wonder Bread. Yeah. Or the manna, or the frozen section where you get the manna bread, which are made also from sprouted grains that are formed into a loaf, to have some of that, some of those types of breads. Or make your own breads by taking the grain, soaking it in water overnight, let it just begin to sprout, and then coarsely grinding it and forming it into a loaf and bake it on a low flame in the oven. So there's, so what I'm saying right now is that you're right. Most bread is too overly ground, and even a lot of the brands of whole wheat bread are too finely ground, and they're still relatively high glycemic. So if I'm telling a person to take a whole wheat burger bun, I might take that lower half of the burger bun and the top half, and just take the lower half and cut it in half, and eat a quarter, and even open burger bun with a quarter of that. So I could take that one burger bun, a whole grain burger bun, maybe an Ezekiel Food for Life burger bun, and make it into 4, and use it with 4 different bean burgers. Or recommend a pita bread or one of those Ezekiel pitas, which only have 60 calories, because you have less calories of bread. So I'm not saying, I use some bread in my diet, and and people are healthy. I don't think they can't have any, but it's something I want to keep to smaller amounts, because there's so many better quality foods that can occupy a bigger portion of our plate. Yeah. So we're using the best quality breads that we can find, smaller amounts of it, and not having bread occupy a large section of your diet. But of course, beans are the most glycemically favorable food. So when people go from white bread to 100% whole grain, we see rates of diabetes go down by 30%. But when they go from a whole grain to a bean as their major source of carbohydrate, then you see diabetes and weight loss goes down by another 30%. So it's all relative to what you're comparing it to. Whole grains certainly better than white bread, but then even whole grains compared to a better source of calories like carrots or peas or parsnips or beans or lentils are not going to be as favorable, even the most favorable type of whole grain bread.
Yes. And so what I'm hearing you say is the more, not diluted, but the more fine ground the bread is, the more it will contribute towards diabetes or a high glycemic.
Right. And the word glycemic is we're talking about carbohydrates that flood the body very rapidly. And the example would be sugar or honey would be the most glycemic foods because the sugar enters the bloodstream so rapidly, but white bread is a pretty close second. Mm. So when you're eating people, I always call it the cake diet. People eat cake at every meal. Mm-hmm. They eat pancakes or muffins for breakfast. That's just cake. And you fry the cake on a pan, that makes it more unhealthy. And then they eat for lunch, they have a piece of pizza or a sandwich or a hot dog or a hamburger, which is just cake, piece of meat between two pieces of cake. And then for dinner, they have pasta, which is just cake. And then they have some more bread or bread-based dessert or cake for dessert, whatever it is they're eating. So they're just having this cake diet is destructive. And when you eat so many foods that don't have a full symphony of nutrients in them, then your body builds up toxic metabolites, reactive oxygen species, advanced glycation end products, lipofusion, aldehydes, all kinds of retained metabolic wastes. And those metabolic wastes cause us to become calorie-consuming monsters because we feel shaky and weak all the time. And we're not constantly keeping our digestive tract busy. The minute we stop digesting food, we start to detox from our high level of toxicity, and we start to feel an uncontrollable desire to overeat just to keep our energy up.
Yeah. You have called it in the classroom, you've called it toxic hunger, I think, at one point, because we think we're hungry, but really what's happening is that we're toxic. And so we don't even really know what hunger is. And after my 5-day fast, my water fast with Dr. Michael Clapper, I understood what you meant, because even those 5 days that I just consumed water, I wasn't hungry. And when I eat something, I get hungry.
Right. Well, the body it loses its hunger for a woman on the second day, usually. A woman goes into ketosis quicker than a man. And once you start burning fat the brain can only function on glucose, but it accepts ketones as an alternative fuel, which is a fat breakdown product, once your body knows it's fasting for a few days. So once your brain's accepting ketones, hunger goes away completely. So you're mostly hungry on the first day and the second day of a fast. By the end of the second day, for a woman, the hunger is gone because she's gone into ketosis by then.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to me. I don't know if I prepared myself emotionally and I had a support. I had Victoria, and I also had, her name is just left my brain. But
maybe you destroyed those brain cells.
It was all the bread I ate after the fast. I'm just joking. Okay. So, but that's the thing right now, as I'm preparing to go into surgery. So I have surgery scheduled for Friday. I've shared this with my viewers, my viewing friends, my listeners. And what I'm doing now as I prepare to go into surgery is I'm doing a juice cleanse. I'm getting my body, I'm getting everything that's, if I eat anything processed, I'm getting all of that out of my system so that when I am in the process of healing, I'm not going to be digesting a lot of food. I just want to be able to heal properly. Any tips on that, Dr. Fuhrman?
Yes, don't fast before surgery.
Well, I'm not fast. Well, it's a cleanse.
Don't juice cleanse before surgery.
Okay, so
start to eat food.
Okay.
Your regular diet with salad and beans and nuts. You don't want to start to have your albumin drop and your proteins get low before surgery, because you're not going to be able to eat much after surgery. And you don't want to go in with relatively malnourished or in a fasting state for surgery. And then it's going to dehydrate you for surgery, because fasting is dehydrating.
Okay.
And so you should really, that's okay. You did that to this point, but now you should be eating up to the 2 days before, when you have to go on the liquid diet to prepare you for surgery.
Okay. So perfect, because tomorrow would be my day before the surgery. And so what I'm trying to do is trying to get anything toxic out. So I have been having just like maybe one meal, so that
that's good.
Yeah, but
you're not getting toxins out
yeah.
in 1 or 2 days. It takes months to get the toxins out of your body. It takes months to get the nutrients in. If I was measuring the nutrient levels of your body, you wouldn't suddenly eat healthy for a week and they're going to be high. You need healthy for months to get them high. You need unhealthy for months to get the toxins out too.
Yeah, well, I've been eating.
I know you have. I'm just saying for the general people listening.
For the general people, okay, yeah.
Detox for a week or 5 days, and all of a sudden their body is perfect now.
Yes. Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. I felt really, really good. I would have spurts of feeling really good during the water fast. And then I'd feel tired and I'd lay down, because this was like my little, you know, fastcation. I called it my fastcation. And, you know, I think having Dr. Michael Clapper, you know, coaching me through this process and having my support group was maybe in my mind, I just knew that I was going to eat for 5 days or 6 days or whatever it was, and that I just needed to hold tight. But going into surgery, my concept is I just want to be healthy. So I've been having, you know, fruits and vegetables, you know, raw and mostly whole food, plant-based. And so going into and maybe going out, I found this cold pressed juice that is frozen, and it's sent to you frozen right away. And I've been doing that. So hopefully that will help, and I will have my 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day, so that I can make sure that my, what was it? Albumin doesn't go
Yes,
down.
the albumin is a measure of protein reserves in your body. You don't want to be relatively malnourished before you enter surgery. So even from protein, so you really want to be on a stable diet beforehand, not do a major fast before that. But in any case, because we're talking about healing, reconstituting tissue, healing from the wounds, and we want to maximize healing and health, and you're saying reduce risk of infection. So you want to do all the right things moving into surgery. That's great that you're doing that.
Yes, yes, thank you. Okay, so we've talked about flour, and you mentioned honey several times, and this is what I don't understand. I used to be a sugarholic. I've shared this with you before. I'm so different than I used to be, and so I used to put honey on my, you know, sugar-free desserts, or even my raw vegan desserts that I would do, I would add, because they say add agave, add honey. But then once I got that sugar taste out of my mouth, I don't like honey anymore. I don't like agave anymore. So let's talk about these sugary substitutes that people think, oh, I'm eating, you know, vegetables, or I'm eating fruits, but then they're adding all this honey. Are they nullifying this meal, or is it still better than sugar?
It's the same thing, because it all has to do with the amount of calories coming from glucose and how fast it enters the bloodstream. And honey and sugar has no difference. The small amount of difference in nutritional profile is almost irrelevant. So there's no difference. And, you know, when people reduce, we have studies that show when people cut out meat and butter and eggs, and they substitute more white bread and honey and those type of foods, those vegan foods, they don't see a reduction in heart attack or cancer risks. You're just substituting one poor food for another. So vegan or vegetarian populations who are eating processed food, high glycemic diets, see no health advantages to reducing animal products in their diet. It's only when the animal products are reduced and the replacement foods then become vegetables, beans, nuts, and fresh fruit do we see those tremendous differences. And that's where a lot of the confusion comes, because people they see it black and white, and they see it, you know, bread or rice versus meat, whereas they're all bad foods, so that we don't want to compare those foods.
Yeah.
But I'm saying something a little bit additional here. I'm saying that because these foods have such large caloric concentration, they drive behavior. And so when you have you take an animal in a cage and you feed them their native diet, they eat a certain amount of food and they're satisfied. But if you feed them very concentrated calories, like oil or honey or French fries or something, or pizza, they're going to stop eating their natural diet and just go after the caloric concentration, because there's a stimulatory effect, like a drug. And the stimulatory effect of the rush of calories into the bloodstream affects dopamine receptors in the brain and makes you driven and devoted now to wanting to overconsume calories and go after concentrated calories. So Americans have become food addicts And this animal now won't eat its native diet. It'll become overweight. It'll have an uncontrollable caloric driver now. And I'm saying right now that it's a form of it's a form of addiction, just like if you were addicted to cocaine or alcohol.
Yeah, yeah.
And to the degree that you have addiction, to that degree, you're less kind, you're less thoughtful to other people, you are less creative, and you're less concerned about the value and substance and protection of the outside world. Your world becomes you. When you're a heavy cocaine addict, you live to meet your needs for cocaine, and nothing else matters that much. You can actually steal from people, do all kinds of horrible things just to fuel your addiction. But since food addiction is so powerful, it happens to a lesser degree, but still to a degree that people just work to create money so they can go out and get fast food and get burgers and get sweets and get croissants and get pizza and get, and to get ice cream. They're living for their addiction, and the addiction affects the same brain centers as does cocaine and heroin or opiates. And to the degree their behavior is driven to fuel that addiction in direct proportion, it lessens their humanitarianism, and it lessens their humanness, their care for others, their love for others, their consideration, their ability to consider other people's feelings. Everything that makes them the great person they could have been starts to be reduced by their exposure to these foods, and their life revolves around meeting their addictive needs, and everything else comes second. They can't be as good as a parent, as good as a person or neighbor. In other words, and it reduces their intelligence and creativity at the same time. So they get less ability to deal with the stresses in their life and to make their life better. So it becomes a reinforcing cycle of doom. The minute you get hooked on fast food, processed food, and commercial baked goods.
Yes.
So, it's almost like what I'm saying right now is that the growth of the fast food industry has made people more angry, less ability to relate to others, less caring. And now we have 1 in 5 Americans that are mentally ill, driving anger and angry behavior and mental illness. So now we see people shooting up other people, and nobody's discussing the link between fast food and mental illness. And then we see people caring less about other people, just wanting what's good for themselves, and less caring about long-term benefits for the earth and humanity, and trying to share in the well-being of us all collectively, because they're more driven for their own immediate needs and here and now meeting their addictive behavior. So what I'm saying right now is I'm linking the growth of the fast food movement and the processed food industry and the destruction of the world's environment, climate, relationships with people, and people now divorced from each other, going after their own selfish, driven behaviors and desires, and not really living to protect us all collectively, because they don't really have the care and the creativity and the intelligence they should have had if they ate properly.
It really is sad when you put it that way. You realize that we're like a hamster in a hamster wheel. We think we're doing, we think we're going somewhere, but we really aren't. We're doing the same thing and repeating the same patterns and getting the same results. And so we know what we're doing, and you're sharing beautifully how these things are affecting our mood. If we were to stop and take ownership and responsibility for our life and say, okay, if food affects me negative, let's talk about the foods that will affect us positively. So let's go there. Let's empower.
The problem with that is that when you stop cocaine, you don't feel positive, you feel even more negative. And so now we have people who have strong food addiction. They feel what they call hangry. They're angry and hungry. And they get withdrawal depression and withdrawal anxiety from their poor diet, and they feel more shaky and more weak. So unless people are properly prepared, they're not going to feel better when they eat healthier. They're going to feel worse when they eat healthier. So in order to get well and to save people's lives from themselves and their addictive habits, they have to be properly instructed, motivated, and coached to understand that feeling worse temporarily is their stepping stone and is a favorable experience in order for them to get well. If they're not going to be able to feel worse and accept that, they're stuck in their box and are unable to escape from it.
Great point. Great point. Because we want to stay comfortable. Again, those comfort foods, we want to remain comfortable. And it's scary because the world around you is going to say, oh, eat a burger. You're depressed, eat a burger. You know, and okay, I'm not going to say they. This is how I have felt when I have changed my nutrition, when I've changed my lifestyle that doesn't fit the people around me. And so when we start wanting to change, the people around us will try to sabotage us. How do you coach somebody, especially at the Eat to Live retreat center? How do you prepare people? Because they're surrounded by wonderful people. They're all eating the same foods. They're all feeling good at the same time, and they're learning together. But now you take that person, take them back into their environment where everybody is going to say, maybe you've changed, but we're the same. How do you coach them to deal with it?
We do a lot of counseling, both psychological counseling and personal counseling with how to eat healthfully in an unhealthy world. And it has to do with, you have to be able to have a lot of self-esteem. When you don't have self-esteem, you're looking for the approval of other people. If you're looking for the approval of other people, and other people are all food addicts, they're not going to approve of you when you're trying to eat healthy. And then so you're going to try to please them. It's never going to work. Mm-hmm. So the more self-centered you are in your addictive world, the more you're looking to go after ego glorification and self-satisfaction from feeling you're better than other people, feeling you're important, or feeling that other people like you and approve of you. And what I'm saying is that those things are like cocaine. Trying to get other people to approve of you, to like you, and to think you're special, and to you to think how good you are, those are all things that affect the brain, they're going to affect your long-term health negatively. The minute that so this is what they're learning, we're teaching them to appreciate the beautiful symmetry and aesthetic structure of the world and of food, and how the food is natural foods are built to sustain us and give us good health, and how beautiful that is. And when you get your satisfaction from respecting and being appreciative of the aesthetic structure and value of the real world, and also for your ability to add value to it by having goodwill or positive effects on other people. So it's respecting the value that's there, being considerate of other people, being appreciative of the value that's within them, and wanting to add to that value by you contributing yourself. Mm-hmm. So the more you do that, then you're no longer, and you're feeling good about yourself for the right reasons. You're not going to you don't need to go after trying to be better than another person, diminish the value of somebody else, be in competition with them or contemptuous of others. You're not looking to put anybody down. And when somebody throws you one of those remarks that might be unfavorable because they're uncomfortable the way you're eating, you're not looking to protect your ego and make yourself feel good. You're not caring about what they said or you're just thinking about what would be the best response to have goodwill for them and to perhaps have the opportunity to have a positive effect on this person's life. It's not about you anymore. Yeah. It's about how you can care. What's the best way to care for this person in a way, and then how you can creatively do that with love.
Yeah.
So I think what they're hopefully learning at our retreat center is that this is broader than whether you just eat a banana or a piece of cake. This is, we want people away from their addictive triggers, but we want them with the tools to be happy in their life, feel good about themselves, and not have other people's addictions and problems make their life difficult.
Yeah. What are you finding, Dr. Fuhrman, when it comes to people that are coming to you that are perhaps maybe morbidly obese or maybe have a lot of health issues, because of their lifestyle? Maybe they're still slender, but they still are sick, because skinny doesn't mean that you're healthy but what correlation have you made with past traumas and overeating and using food to protect?
Using food to what? To escape?
To protect yourself.
Protect yourself.
Yeah, and you have a cocaine addict, that someone who's doing cocaine or maybe drinking alcohol until they're numb and they pass out, you know that they're trying to hide from something. Unfortunately, food is the kind of the only addiction that, you know, when you can be a heroin addict or a cocaine addict or smoke pot or whatever and clean up, go to work, be functional, then do it all over again. Eventually it'll catch up to you. But when you're overeating, everybody knows because you see it. You either overweight, you see these signs. And so have you made a connection with people that are going to the retreat center, the Eat to Live retreat center in San Diego, California, with their needing to heal some past trauma that keeps them, you know, distracted in all the food eating and that making themselves feel better with the cakes and the sugars and all that?
It's common. It's not always the case because, as you are aware, sometimes the food people are fed, and when you like, we know there's a relationship between candy consumption and later life criminal behavior. In other words, it's people who consume the most candy have the highest rates of becoming a violent criminal later in life. So we know that addiction could start from just the most well-meaning parent thinking that they're rewarding their child with candy. And some people are biologically more susceptible to these physical addictive substances like cocaine, like alcohol, and like sugar. But what you're saying is also true. There is a certain number of people that have certain stresses and childhood trauma, bad parenting, social isolation, abusive parenting, that did turn to food as a means of comfort that exacerbated their addiction. And when we're trying to get people to not emotionally overeat, it's sometimes helpful to deal with these things with the psychologists that we have and with people. In other words, you want to give people the most support the support they need, and not more than what they need, the right amount what they need so they can succeed. And we want them to move forward too and realize they become better guardians of their own health, and they become the best mother to themselves when they can put this together with having the right thoughts, the right purposes in life, and also taking care of themselves, the right food and the right nutrients. Their life starts to come together, and they're able to solve their own difficulties and even solve the relationship difficulties. Because now once they get that integrity to really being proud of themselves, they are less likely to be manipulated and to be controlled by other people. They become the controllers of their own life and their own future. This is all about, when you eat right, you become the captain of your ship. You're not relying on doctors to take care of you, because most people think, I just do what I want. My doctor's responsible for my health. And you think drugs are your answer, pharmaceutical drugs are your answer to good health and how much you go to a doctor. And it's the opposite, you know what I mean? But now when they get the food right, it's so easy that other things fall into place, because now they become the captain of their own ship, and they become the captain of their own life.
Yeah, and when you start eating better and you start eating foods that are actually helping you boost your mood, help you feel empowered, because now you're doing something to love yourself. It's amazing that you look back and you go, gosh, I didn't know I could feel better. I didn't know I felt so bad, because bad becomes your comfort zone. Unhealthy becomes your comfort zone. And I always say to people when I'm coaching them, or if I'm in the classroom or whatever, I always say, look at your doctor. If your doctor doesn't look healthy and they can't take care of themselves, how are they going to take care of you? So move on and find someone that represents what you want. And that if you want to start being healthier, and I want to talk a little bit about my sponsors, Dr. Fuhrman, because, this is where we take ownership and responsibility for our life. This is where we look at ourselves and say, this isn't me loving myself. How can I love myself? And if you become a subscriber at whenyounneedafriend.com, you get my 90-day challenge to self-love ebook, because I think at the root core is a lack of connection to ourself, a lack of connection of knowing who we are or what we want, and a false sense of pride, a false sense of empowerment. So when we really look at ourselves, and this is where we have these conversations that we might be afraid of having with ourselves, with others. And so go to whenyounneedafriend.com, please subscribe. When you become a subscriber, you get my 90-day challenge to self-love. Like and follow me on social media. Click on my YouTube channel, follow me there. The shows get sent to you to your iPhone, your tablet, and all that. So please go there and support the show this way. Also, click onto my sponsors page. We have wonderful sponsors that have taken a stand for us, like Liberty Health Share, Keep Me Safe Organics, First Alternative Care. It's Dr. Stephen Grable, who's a holistic alternative, and he's an MD who's looking at the total person in Jacksonville, Florida. The pharmacy, which will help do compounding, not just for people, but for pets too. These are people that are standing outside that comfort zone, like Live Longer Medical. All these you will find on my on the sponsors page. Figure out how you can support our sponsors the way that they're supporting the classroom. This classroom is free to you. But here's the deal. You too can become a sponsor by becoming an enrolled student. So I want to encourage all of us to keep this classroom and hold it to a higher level so that we can grow together. I also ask that everything you hear here in the classroom, that you check it out yourself, because it's easy to repeat something somebody else says and make it your truth. But until you research it and you buy into that truth and it becomes your belief, it won't make sense. So I want to encourage you to always do that. So here we go. There's a question, Dr. Fuhrman. Thank you, Robert, because I can't see, there's something going on. I see that there's lots of questions. There's something going on with my tablet. There's a question, and I don't know who it's from, but it says, how can I sign up for this retreat? Go ahead.
Well, we'll come to drfuhrman.com and hit the retreats button, and you'll see a lot of information about the retreat, more and everything about it, with a phone number to call to if you're interested in coming. And people, so on. And also, some of the information we've talked about tonight, emotional overeating and food addiction, is in my book, The End of Dieting.
Yeah.
The End of Dieting. And some of the information about the food and the brain, and even the stuff about, which we didn't even talk about, was how throughout history, poor nutrition in populations that have had poor nutrition have become more violent and more suicidal, homicidal, and dangerous.
That's in your fast food genocide, isn't it?
That's in my fast food genocide
Yes.
book. So I'm mentioning those two books because obviously my books are like my babies.
Yes.
They're dear to my heart. And I think there's so much benefit people have from studying those two books, The End of Dieting and Fast for Genocide. Because even though the word fast for genocide doesn't sound like a dieting book or a self-help book, it really helps you put all the pieces together and really make your worldview of eating healthfully is so critical to having you enjoy and being, being able to do this with excitement, with enthusiasm, and with passion.
Yeah, and make sure that when you call the Eat to Live Retreat Center in California, it's in San Diego, California, which I'm planning on going. Once I'm all healed, Dr. Fuhrman, I am booking that plane, and Robert and I are going to go there to spend some time with you and your beautiful wife and all the people that are healing.
I'm looking forward to that, and you're going to love it there because we have so many. It's so beautiful there, and we're right on the border of a 196-acre nature preserve for hiking in the woods, and it's almost like you walk out the door and it's so peaceful and beautiful. You're just looking at nature all around you. We have this little nature preserve in the middle of San Diego. It's not in the middle of San Diego. It's actually in Rancho Santa Fe. So it's about a half an hour north of the airport. But it's like we're so far away from the city. It's so close. It's just an amazing little area I found.
Yes, it's a beautiful place, and we've done many classrooms, lessons there. So check them out. Dr. Fuhrman can be found on all over the internet, all over the world. But he is also on my Facebook page, my YouTube channel. He's in my whenyouneedafriend.com. So just put in Fuhrman and you'll get all since 2015. So make sure that when you contact the Eat to Live Retreat Center, let them know that Lily sent you and that you heard him here, because Dr. Fuhrman takes the time every month. He's been on, hasn't missed once. From 2015. So we've learned a lot together. I myself embrace a nutritarian lifestyle. I don't push it on anybody because it's got to come from you. And so one of the things I want to share, Dr. Fuhrman, and I do want to start addressing some of the questions maybe after we finish the podcast, is when we are oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. When we are in the decide that we are going to make this change, do you see a difference in the person when somebody says, I am doing this for myself. I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it for myself because I deserve this. And not because I need it, but because I deserve it. Do you see a change in that person, the way they look, the way they sound? How do you know when they're coming to you that they are ready to change?
Well, I know one thing is that when they learn enough to make a decision to change, they immediately become more hopeful. You know, they were very depressed before that. I can just give you the story of a man I spoke to 2 weeks ago who was in the hospital where his doctors were hovering over him, told he needed replacement of he needed 4 arteries bypassed in his heart before he left the hospital. So I spoke to him in the hospital, and he came right from the hospital to my retreat. And of course, the fact that he didn't have to have his chest cut open and didn't have to have his heart damaged and can melt away the atherosclerosis and take away his weight and recover again and get healthy again. His whole world is opened up with a fresh start about life. He's so enthused. It's like he's back and given a second chance in life. So I think that with the right information, because look where they were heading to more surgery, more drugs, more illness, more incapacity, and more pain. And it's not fun. Going to conventional medical treatments is not fun and is very depressing. But just the fact that you can be back on your own and have a miraculous event of self-healing occur because of your own doing is tremendously satisfying, gratifying, and just gives people a whole new outlook on life and get a second chance to live their life now. And this time they're going to do it right. You know?
Yes. And that is so important. It's doing it right, because there's so many times that we want to do it for somebody else, or maybe we're coming from a place of lack or fear. But I love when you've said it many times in the classroom, Dr. Fuhrman, that unless you're actively having a heart attack, a stent is not a good option for you. Changing your lifestyle. Can you share a little bit more of why?
Well, when you put a stent in a person's heart, you're putting a foreign body in their heart. It's never the same, and you always have that foreign body going to create the likelihood of having a clot, increasing the risk of having a heart attack from the stent. But then they put you on a clot-busting drug, aspirin, Plavix, blood thinners, so to prevent the stent from causing the clot. But then the blood thinners increase risk of having a hemorrhagic stroke, which is deadly, or gastrointestinal bleeding. So what you did by necessitating the use of blood thinners is increasing the risk of having a hemorrhage. Mm-hmm. So there's no overall lifespan advantage from having a stent put in if you're having it put in electively, only if you're undergoing a heart attack and going to be at high risk from not putting in the stent to allow the blood to flow to the dying myocardium is putting in a stent something you should do or considering. So They should be doing elective stents. If you're a candidate for an elective stent, you should be doing aggressive nutritional therapy. They should be coming to me. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that I've saved hundreds of people from having to put in stents and have bypass surgery that are now thriving. You know, a good example is John Pelikowski, who came to me in his early 70s, and they told him he needed 3 stents placed. And I said, and I had no books out then. I had nothing to convince him other than my words. And I said, John, just going to be 3 months. I'll show you can feel so much better. You won't need the stent. And now he's 98 years old. Never had the stents. He was on blood pressure medications back then. Now at 98, he's on no blood pressure medication without having a heart condition. So the point I'm making is he would have never lived this long or been this healthy. He would have continued to deteriorate. And the minute you do those therapies, you're stuck on drugs the rest of your life. And they're also psychologically disturbing because now you're not the full person anymore. And now you're going to be addicted to have to be on medications forever.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. If breast implants can do what it's done to me and other women who are getting cancer, who are being diagnosed with MS and lupus and fibromyalgia, some of them can't get out of bed. You know, if a breast implant can do that, can you imagine what a stent could do into the blood system, into the artery system? I can't imagine. So, you know, I want to take a stand for all of us. You know, I'm taking a stand for myself, and I'm saying, you know, I want to live a natural life. And, you know, I'm not saying to stop your medications. I'm not saying any of that. but it's time for us to take our health back. Now, although we're hearing the music, that's for our podcast. When we are done with the music, we're going to continue for a few minutes taking some of your questions. Make sure you put a cue there. And Dr. Fuhrman, as always, it is always a pleasure to spend time with you in the classroom. I want to remind all of you to go to drfuhrman.com to learn more. Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, we have lots of comments, but I'm not seeing the cues. If you have a question for Dr. Fuhrman, please type in a cue, and that way I'll know. Because there's lots of comments, and if you have a question, type in a Q, a capital Q, and then write your question, and that way I'll be able to address it, ask it at that time. So let's see, there's a comment. Okay. Oh, so there must be some comments here. People are really excited. Share, I've seen, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Dr. Fuhrman, because when I make my homemade pizza, I make my own sauce. I make sure that everything is, I don't even use cans anymore for the tomato sauce because you had said that it leaches through the cans, the aluminum.
The BPA lining, yeah.
Yes,
but
the lining.
The plastic lining, even the non-BPA plastics are not healthy either.
So you say glass.
Yes.
And so I have the, if I need to hack it, I buy the stuff that doesn't have any sugar or any salt. It's just if I need to hack it, but if not, I just put it in the blender. But I've learned how to make my own tomato sauce for my pizza. But the only thing that I have not been able to do, and I've been seeing some comments with the cauliflower, but I use like a tortilla, like a flat gluten-free tortilla, to do the base. So what would be a good alternative? Do you have a quick recipe for this, for alternative crust if we want to make pizza that has that consistency?
Well, I like collard wraps myself.
Really?
I just
Tell more.
use collards and then melt something on top, like tomato sauce and broccoli and mushrooms on top, or I take a collard wrap and I put some banana and almond butter on it and roll it up or something. Or I take a collard wrap and put vegetables and the sauce on it and roll it up. But they also make jicama and turnip, very finely sliced ones. You can buy them, I think, at some Whole Foods market, and you could wrap up a thing. But you can make, I sometimes can use a corn tortilla. That's the frozen section made by one of these brands that make all the ingredients.
They have sprouted, non-GMO, organic. Yes, I have those in my. So those would be good for.
Because you're not using a lot of bread or a lot of tortilla. You're just using one little thin piece with a lot of vegetables with it. So I think it's reasonable to not, because you're not eating a lot of the cooked carbohydrate. It's a vehicle to deliver a lot of vegetables and mushrooms and raw food into you.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. So we have a question from Beth. So Beth, thank you all for standing by and being patient as we were having our conversation today about food and mood. But Beth wants to know, what's the best thing to say to husband who is a junk boy?
Well, I think the best thing to say is to tell him how much you love him and care about his future and want to have so many happy occasions with you together. And if he could take better care of, if he would allow you to make some really delicious recipes that are healthy for him, that you could maybe work together so you can have a better life together. He has to feel you're not being forced into it, that he's not being forced into it, but it really comes from love. And you recognize the difficulty of change and how hard it is for people to adjust their taste. And I think you can do this with love. And that's what I'm talking about, being loving in a creative way. And when people, I'm not going to, promote my recipes, my retreat. What I'm saying was, when you taste some of these recipes that we make and we teach, they're so delicious. that the person who doesn't want to eat this way is going to soon realize not only not missing things, but this is really a delicious way to eat. So make yourself into a great nutritarian chef. Try some of like the cookbook recipes, the desserts, and all the wonderful ways to make this taste fantastic, and have fun with you and your husband making some healthy meals that taste fantastic. Like you're going to a 5-star restaurant. I'm so lucky because I go to my retreat and I don't have to make food for myself. I have these chefs making it for me. And it's like I'm in a 5-star restaurant eating incredible food that tastes and looks so beautiful, but is so delicious. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, people should come here just to eat, even if they have nothing wrong with them. You know what I mean? I get people making food for me and cleaning up after me. So I don't have to work.
I'm looking forward to it. I love, we've just got to stop thinking about the mentality of I don't want to give up this or give up that. When people start thinking about giving up anything, they're setting themselves up in a lack mentality. What they get to do is to reshape, reframe, rewrite the program and say, I'm not giving up anything. I'm embracing health. And I love how you're saying about lovingly able to say to the person, however, that may be too much for that person. What I did is I prepared the food that I wanted to prepare. And once in a while, I'd make some batch cooking for my husband and whatever he wanted. This is the beginning. And he would eat what I ate, but he also wanted certain things that he wanted to have. And I would make a big batch and I put it in the freezer and he'd thaw it out if he wanted to do that. But ultimately, what did it was I got really good at making these comfort foods taste so good, and having Dr. Fuhrman's recipes and taking his recipes and turning it into my Latin spicy type of things and eating it the way he makes it and trying different things that makes me feel like this is good for me. And I can, you eat something and you go, oh, I wonder if this tastes like with this, or how wonder if, so you have the basic and you grow from there. And
the other thing is that you want this person to learn some of this information. So if they don't want to eat this way themselves, they should be encouraged to hear what you're hearing and learn what you're learning for the point of loving you and understanding you better.
Yes.
You want to share this with them, not to the point of pressuring them to change, but for the reason that they can understand why you're doing it, so they respect what you're doing. That's a start.
Yeah.
Then of course, we're talking here about, when I said to my son when he was 5 years old, I said, what would you have done in this situation if you were the father and you loved their son as much as I love you? What I'm saying is this wife says to her husband, what would you do if you were me and you know what I know and you loved your spouse as much as I love you?
Yeah.
How would you try to solve this problem? And so if you're open, if you're loving, if you're creative, this is going to work, because this makes people happier, healthier, and having a better life together. And you can enjoy your future together, sharing so many wonderful things when you can not be a medical cripple and not being addicted to doctors. It's not just being addicted to food. It's also spending your life going to doctors and get painful medical tests, procedures stuck, and things put in your orifices of your body, and rushing to emergency rooms and going in hospitalizations. I mean, it's just horrible what people have to suffer with in life when they try to live more conventionally, just for that taste of that donut.
Yes.
No way is that worth it. We have incredible stuff that's better, it's tastier anyway. And your taste buds improve and you change with time.
I know.
So when your husband understands this, he'll get it.
Just get really good at your dishes and offer it. I take, at the beginning when I first started changing my lifestyle, and I would go to places and there was no food that I could eat, I'd bring my own food and everybody wanted to try it because it looked good and it tasted great. But then I'd say, hey, wait, this is my food. And then I had to start making extra food so that I could eat and they could eat. The best way to get to somebody to try it and it tastes good, that's the best way. That's the best way to educate. And they'll say, hey, what's in it? And that's how we educate. And so that's what I've been able to do. And I hope that helps. Now, Jassy, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Dr. Fuhrman, does Dr. Fuhrman believe in BMI? Believe in the BMI should you follow or adhere to it? does Dr. Fuhrman believe in the BMI? Should you follow?
Well, mostly people should have a BMI below 23. Certainly men below 24 and women below 23. I'm saying is the maximum BMI. Most long-lived populations have BMIs even 22 and below.
Okay.
So, right, most Americans are so grossly overweight that what they consider the good weight for them is still overweight. We have such an overweight population. We've shifted our populations because I'm so overweight that what's considered normal today or even okay is still overweight.
Yes, yes. Okay, Dr. Fuhrman, I'm going to keep asking until you tell me one more, okay? So the question is from Camilla. Camilla says, what is the point that can relate to teens about being mindful of G-bombs, especially to kids already PBSED? I don't know what that is. She says, thank you. So what is PB said? PB said.
I don't know. But in any case, I mean, we have a real problem in society today. We talked about it on this show, the link between compassion, the survival of humans on the planet, the climate, whether we're going to destroy, this is all related to what we eat and taking good care of our health. I mean, it's all, and being the full human we can be with our full mental powers to solve the issues of our times and be considerate of other people. I think that that we can get through to the young people. They want to be able, so what I'm sharing with you, they have a full mental ability to comprehend this if they're exposed to it. So all you have to do is ask them to spend some time in a discussion as a family, sharing what you're learning, going over some of the teachings and seeing if they can resonate with it. And don't, so it doesn't have to be pushed down their throat, but there could be some learning as a family together and appreciative of what you're learning that could benefit all people. So when a family comes to see me, because they're coming in for me to talk the child into eating healthier, I turn it around and I try to talk the child into making their parents eat healthier. Because I'm claiming that the child ate poorly to begin with because the parents created that problem, number one. Mm-hmm. And the child should be concerned about the parents' health just as much as the parents concerned about their health. And I want the child to be my eyes and ears in the house to make sure that mother and father stay taking better care of their health because they love their parents and they want their parents to be healthy. Good. And that's the way the child eventually turns and becomes healthier themselves because they see themselves as a role model to help the parents. It's not forced on the child. We're not all ganging up on the child to have them eat healthier. Let the child. So it starts out with having the child understand how food is dangerous and how the parents misled them, mistaught them, and got them in this problem because the parents didn't know enough about good health. We want the child to have a fresh look at this subject matter so that they can help the parents.
Dr. Fuhrman, I used to have this saying. I have 4 kids, and when I'd come from the grocery store, when I needed their help, I'd yell, from the garage. I'd go into the house and I'd say, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. And they would come out and they would help me. And they were a part of the experience. And just recently I said, instead of a happy meal, and the idea of a happy meal, which is what, children at 2 or 1 are having happy meals because of the toy, make a happy meal coming together and preparing food together, being happy in the kitchen, soliciting them, all hands on deck in the kitchen. And once they start preparing and developing a relationship with their food, perhaps maybe there won't be so much, my kids are grown and I feel like I'm helpless. I can't, and even when they come over, I try to prepare as much as I can, but they want their comfort foods, So I try to alter them a little bit more. So those are things.
That's where it has to be. That's where this is an educational process, not a food tasting, just a food tasting experiment. Yeah. It's an educational process.
Yeah.
And education is compelling and it has a message that can't be ignored.
Yes. And this is a sprint. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is a decision that we're going to choose. This is not a diet. This is a lifestyle change. So eventually, the ones that keep running, where you just got to pace yourself. So Eleonora says that she wants to know why she got so sick after being raw vegan for 1.5 months and ended up in the ER. That's a pretty long, because there's a lot of vegans out there that are eating, Diet Coke and what is it? Not Twinkies, but the chocolate cookies that
Yeah.
Oreos. So what kind of a vegan?
She said she's a raw vegan. And it's the question is impossible to answer because I don't know
Yeah,
if
we don't know all
this
this.
person had past surgeries, diverticulum, couldn't handle the raw food, eating mostly fruit, deficient. We have no idea of the reasons for her problems and whether she had a problem had nothing to do with what she was eating. Or may have been from a past history and damage. So I have not enough knowledge or insight into her.
Correct. Yeah, and I agree. And
Question. I think we got to wrap this up shortly anyway.
yes. Okay, so one more question. Let's see if I find another cue. I'm going to scroll down. The next one is from Carrie. So yeah, I want to encourage you that if you want, you can become a member of Dr. Fuhrman's web. So I got thrown out of the conversation and I just want to close real quick. I know I'm so grateful to Dr. Fuhrman for finishing up for me. He has taken over the classroom. And so I want to ask you, if you enjoyed this information, if this information was useful for you, help us grow. Help us spread this information. Like us, follow us, share, join the classroom. Love yourself more than anyone could ever love you. And not in a narcissistic way, but in a loving, caring, and tender way. The way we love our children, the way we love unconditionally. Take that and use it for yourself so that you can feed yourself, spirit, mind, and body. Thank you so much for joining us in the classroom. Give it the thumbs up right below and help us grow. We'll see you soon. Bye.